Okay, categorical propositions. We're starting chapter 4. Let me define what a categorical proposition is. And you're going to notice now in the class we're going to start getting a little bit more quantitative in some of these interpretive skills you need. You know, when you're deciding between two possibilities like the informal fallacies or even what's the premise and the conclusion. Things are a little bit more exact and less requiring you to have these interpretive skills. So for some of you, the rest of the course may be a better fit, or you might find it easier. Typically, students tend to start doing better and better in the course as the course goes along. So we're going to be kind of switching gears here and talking a little bit about categorical propositions and syllogisms. All these things came from the philosopher Aristotle. So chapter 4, section 4.1 is going to talk about 4 categorical propositions. And here's what a categorical proposition is. It's a proposition that relates two classes or categories, okay? And later on we're going to be doing Venn diagrams, which you know, you have a subject class and a predicate class, and don't worry, I'm going to have some handouts that have some real circles. You know, I didn't get an A in drafting, okay? But you could see this as the S class and this is the P class. And a categorical proposition always is going to be talking about a subject and a predicate class and describing if all or part of the subject class is included or excluded from the predicate class. Okay? So you might be going, well, why are we going to be studying these things? Well, many of the statements we make in ordinary discourse are either categorical propositions or they stand or are readily translatable into them. Standard form categorical propositions represent an ideal of clarity in language, and a familiarity with the relationships that prevail among them provides a backdrop of precision for all kinds of logical uses. What Aristotle did is he looked out into the world and he said, you know what, I think you can group things into different categories. Everything has its place. Like, you know, when you go and your mother when you were little said, go clean your room. Well, you put all your Legos over there, you put your dolls over here, your stuffed animals went over there, your pants went in the pants drawer, things like that. And so Aristotle thought you could group all the substances out in the world into categories, and he thought that wasn't an accident, that there was a cookie cutter somewhere, right? And so he started relating these substances after he got them into classes to one another. And then that actually, he then put all that stuff down on paper and noticed some neat logical relationships between them. So if you stick to describing things in two classes, and life obviously can be more complicated than that, he used two classes and he related these two classes together in 4 different ways, and those are going to be the 4 categorical propositions. And so the reason you want to study these is just from those 4 propositions and these ways of relating two classes, you get simple statements, simple arguments, and he started noticing lots of neat logical patterns that can have some applicability. We can, you know, let's say we started talking and a lot of our sentences, we could translate them or convert them into categorical propositions. Then all the logical goodies or insights we have learned from these 4 categorical propositions, we could start applying those techniques and rules of inference to some of the very things we would talk about in ordinary English. And later on, one of the sections, I believe it's 4.7 or 4.6, it's all about translating ordinary statements we may make into categorical propositions, and then all those categorical propositions we can utilize all the logic that Aristotle teaches us about them. Okay, this will all become clear, so let's just jump right into it. These 2 classes I've talked about, I already alluded here. One of them will be called the subject class, and one of them will be called the predicate class. Okay, so the classes are denoted by a subject term and a predicate term. It could be, all dogs are four-legged animals, so the subject class is dogs, predicate class would be four-legged animals. Okay, so you have an S and a P, a subject and predicate class, and categorical proposition, one of these four here, is either going to assert that all or part of the subject class denoted by the subject term is included or excluded from the class denoted by the predicate term. So there's the subject class, and then you got the predicate class, okay? And here are the four. Every member of the S class is included in the predicate class, all SRP. Here it's saying not one single member of the S class is going to be included in the P class. No S or P. And this one here is called an A categorical proposition. This one here is called an E, okay? So there's an A. So you'll be able to recognize this skeleton or argument form and go, oh, this is an A proposition, this is an E. Here's one. Some S or P really says at least one member of S is included in the P class, and that's called an I statement. And then the last one here is an O proposition, and it's saying at least one member of the S class is excluded, is not a member of the P class. Some S are not P. And some in logic, and your book talks about this, means this. It means at least one. Okay? It means at least one, so keep that in mind. All right, let's go to the A proposition. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to give you some examples in English sentences, and then I'm going to talk about distribution, distributed class, and an undistributed class, okay? So an A proposition, you remember it was right up here, all SRP. If a categorical proposition is a substitution instance of this form, then it is a standard form A proposition, okay? So we have an example here. Here's the skeleton, right? You're familiar with that term. That's the bones, the bare bones, and then here's a substitution instance. S here is all Atkins dieters, okay? That's the S class right there. All Atkins dieters are carbohydrate avoiders. That should be an S there. Okay, plural. And really what this is saying is the entire class of Atkins dieters is included as a part of, is some of the wider class of things that avoid carbohydrates. Only some in the carbohydrate class are referred to. So if you had this as the carbohydrate class, carbohydrate avoiders, all this is saying is that if you had Atkins dieters, they are included in this class, but this class is just talking about a little bit of the larger class of carbohydrate avoiders. You could have people on, let's say, the South Beach diet. I don't know the South Beach diet very well, but let's say part of that is they keep their carbohydrates low. So this is just saying all Atkins dieters are avoiding carbohydrates. So it's referring to all of the Atkins dieters, but it's only referring to part of the carbohydrate avoider class, not all of them, okay? Now, the reason I bolded here the entire class, and here I have included as a part of, is some of the, the wider class of things, is so you could start to grasp what I mean by distributed and undistributed, okay? Let me define what distribution is, because you have to know if a class is distributed or undistributed in order to do some other things with Aristotle's four categorical propositions later. So I want to try to explain to you why something's distributed or undistributed and how you would recognize this. Okay, now in this thing here, this sentence here, all Atkins dieters are carbohydrate avoiders. The subject term is distributed, and here's what we mean by a class being distributed. A term or class is distributed when it refers to all members of its class. Otherwise, it is undistributed, when only a part of a class is designated. Okay? Distribution is a particular attribute of a term, and like I had just said, it's essential later on in the evaluation of syllogisms. So a class is distributed if every member of the class is being referred to. When it refers to all members of its class, so the term, if you're talking about dogs and you say all dogs, that term is distributed if it's meant for it to refer to all dogs, all members of that class. A term is undistributed if the term is not meant to include all members of whatever class it's referring to, but only part of it. And so conceptually, how would you know if Atkins dieters is distributed and carbohydrate avoiders is distributed or not? Well, you can look at the English of it, and that's why I wrote this out here. When we say all Atkins dieters, we're referring to the entire class of Atkins dieters, right? So every member of the Atkins dieter class is being referred to, so that term is going to be distributed. You know, we'd put a little D here. The entire class of Atkins dieters is included as a part of, is some of the wider class of things. I purposely have put this phrase in here for you to know that carbohydrate avoiders, that term, it's undistributed because it's not really referring to all the kinds of carbohydrate avoiders in the world, just part of it. So as soon as you're able to say part, or it's just some of the wider class of carbohydrate avoiders, then you know it's not distributed, okay? So if we read this, and remember the extra wordiness is I'm doing this on purpose so you can understand. The entire class of carbohydrate avoiders, D, as soon as we're able to say entire, you know it's distributed, is included as a part. See, a part means not all. Some of the wider things is included as a part of, is some of the wider class of things that avoid carbohydrates. Only some in the carbohydrate class are referred to, so you know that carbohydrate avoiders is not distributed. Okay, and you know, I could probably write something down here. This is a rule. If the members of a subject class is included in a predicate class, that predicate class will always be undistributed. Okay, that's something you can remember. If you take something and you include it in another class, another circle, you're just taking that little whatever it is and putting it in there. It's always just going to be a part. So anytime you take a subject class and include it, all or part, if you include it into some other class, it's being included into a class that's not going to be distributed. Okay? All right, so here's an example. Let's give you another one. All horses, so horses is distributed, right? It's talking about all horses distributed, are four-legged animals. The entire class of horses distributed is included as a part of, is some of the wider class of four-legged things in the world. We're talking about horses are some of the four-legged things in the world. So the four-legged animal class, all that's being referred to there is that little part that are where the horses intersect. Okay? And like I said, if you read this sentence here, this can really help you understand distribution. But don't worry. At the end, I have a little cheat sheet. So with that cheat sheet, we're going to label with A, E, I, and O which terms are distributed and which are not. And that's going to be good enough for you to get going and use distribution because you're going to need it later on. These sentences here that are overly wordy, and this one here, It's to try to just help you with the concept, because a lot of students do have trouble with distribution. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'll stop on this one, and then what we'll do with the next video for 4.1 is I'll go over the E proposition, the I proposition, and the O proposition. Okay, so the next video will be part 2 of section 4.1. So what we've done here is I've introduced A, E, I, and O, Aristotle's 4 categorical propositions that relate to classes, and I'm starting to talk to you a little bit about distributed classes and undistributed classes.